Welcome, and thank you all for being here. For those of you who do not know me, I am Eddie Weeks, your legislative librarian. Your legislative library is just across the hall here in Suite 804. Please stop by and say hi at any time. I'm there to answer just about any historical question you may have about the legislature, old laws, past legislators, prior legislation, the legislative process, and even, are there any good winter stories about the Tennessee State Capitol? What a great question, because when that Capitol was completed in 1859, the members were still under the Constitution of 1835. That means that the members were elected in August of the odd-numbered year and took office in that building in October of the odd-numbered year. That means the first meetings of the legislature in that building were in winter, with them convening in October and meeting for the next few months. And what they learned was that that grand building of theirs was cold in the winter. Now, although the Capitol was completed in 1859, the members had been meeting in that building since 1853 while it was still under construction. What's most interesting about that is in this 1855 architect's report on the work done so far on that Capitol building. And it says, the whole building will be heated with furnaces communicating with hot air flues within the walls. That building was probably unheated for the first few winters it was in use by the legislature. And notice that this report is by Francis Strickland, William Strickland's son. William Strickland, the architect, had died the year before in 1854. This note is from the Historic Structure Report on the Capitol, published in the 1980s. It says, in 1854, Lots of Cincinnati installed a furnace to heat 3 rooms on the first floor: the governor's office, the archive room, considered the most important to heat first, and presumably the Secretary of State's office. It worked well, but heated air by these furnaces is not popular. It is thought too dry. McGregor of New York furnished the furnace to heat the House of Representatives Hall in 1856. Similarly, it heated the large room well, but the legislature ordered it not be used, the heat being disagreeable. The heat was then diverted by registers in 1857 to heat the main hall, which was often damp. They would rather be cold than deal with the disagreeable heat in that building. Remember, they're convening in October and meeting for the next few months. That means if they weren't done by late December, they would probably need to take a break. This is 1869 Joint Resolution 39, providing for a recess from December 22nd till January 5th. They had to recess for Christmas so that the members could be home with their families. This was one of the last such resolutions because in 1870 we got a new Constitution, which changed the election and meeting times of the General Assembly. The members would now be elected in November of the even-numbered year and take office in January of the odd-numbered year. And what the members learned then was that as cold as that building was in October, it was even colder in January. 1873 Joint Resolution 24 says that the superintendent of the Capitol be and he is hereby directed to have the furnaces of the Capitol building removed and others of a more durable and improved pattern substituted therefor, to the end that the condition of said Capitol be made more healthy and comfortable, and the walls preserved from premature injury and decay, superinduced by excessive and continued dampness, and that he be required to accept the lowest and best bid for said change or improvement. So the disagreeable heat from 20 years earlier is now not enough for the comfort of the members. A decade after this one, 1883 Joint Resolution 32 says that the State Board of Health be requested to examine into the present mode of heating and ventilating the Capitol building and report the same has upon the sanitary condition of the building, and if necessary in their judgment to recommend such correction as may be deemed advisable, and to further report some means by which to put the water closet in a better sanitary condition. We'll get to the water closet later, but first came 1885. And 1885 must have been a cold winter at that Tennessee state capitol. 1885 Senate Resolution 12, that the Sergeant at Arms is hereby directed to have the window to the northwest of the Senate chamber so repaired as to shut out the cold air which is constantly entering the chamber to the great discomfort of the senators. Resolved further that the Sergeant at Arms is directed to purchase a couple of hat racks for the use of the Senate, and that said amounts be included in the general appropriation bill. Now, we may never know how they managed to use that Capitol for over 30 years without suitable hat racks, but we do know that they had to do something to keep the cold out of that building. 1885 Senate Resolution 15 ordered that the Sergeant at Arms is hereby directed to have the window at the northeast of the Senate chamber, that occupied by the engrossing clerk, so repaired as to protect the engrossing clerk from the cold air. Resolved further that the Sergeant at Arms purchase a curtain for said window, and that said amount be included in the general appropriation bill. So their solution to keep the cold out was to fix the windows and put up curtains. Also in 1885, the legislature appointed a board of commissioners to supervise the repairs then being made to that Capitol building. And in December 1886, that commission issued its report. The committee, in their inexperienced way, then made a careful examination of the entire building and grounds in every part and particular, discovering many and vital defects and needed repairs. The roof leaking badly, the stone in many places disintegrating and decaying, the water closet a stench in the nostrils of decency that had been declared a nuisance both by the State Board of Health and the city sanitation officer. The offices loaded with the accumulated dirt of years and without the necessary conveniences for transacting business of same. The grounds badly in need of attention, and other minor things too numerous to mention. In fact, the whole building and all departments greatly in need of repairs and a general and thorough overhauling. So, that magnificent Capitol building is in need of repair, cleaning, and overhauling. The roof is leaking, and the water closet stinks. Now, if you kids have not figured out yet what a water closet is, that was the polite term for the toilet room. Yes, the toilet room. There was one bathroom in that entire Capitol building, and it was vividly described as a stench in the nostrils of decency. After deciding that the roof was the most serious issue, the committee declared, the next most important question, in the opinion of your committee, and that received their attention, was the water closet, which had been declared a nuisance, and which was indeed not only unpleasant by reason of its odors that permeated the entire building, but likewise most unhelpful to the occupants, and therefore specially important from a sanitary standpoint. The place was so rotten, foul, and full of decay, it was found impossible to repair. Therefore concluded to tear out and build anew, which was done at considerable expense, true, but in an eminently satisfactory manner with excellent results. Entirely new, thoroughly ventilated, the ventilation being carried out by a double system of pipes through and over the roof of the building, with a water supply tank underneath the roof, connected by pipes with the cisterns and closets, and made available for cleansing the entire building. The water is forced to the tank by a hand pump located in the closet room, which is difficult and requires strong, hard work. We recommend that this pump be substituted with a small hot air pump or steam pump, the cost of which will be several $100s. The commission could not buy the pump themselves as they were already over their budget. In fact, that commission spent $6,808.58 on the repairs, which was $8.58 more than their budget. And I know what you're wondering, that $6,800 then would be over $200,000 today. The commission continued in their report. The character of this building is such as to justify the assertion that cheap improvements are mere patchings, not in the interest of economy, durability, or permanency, and therefore the most expensive. The building is perhaps the handsomest and most imposing in the South, and erected at great expense. It should be kept in perfect repair, if for none other reason than purely a matter of economy, with a view of preserving a costly property. That commission also mentioned the heating, or the lack thereof, in their report. They would also recommend that, as a matter of economy as well as comfort, a new and improved heating system be introduced, the effect of which will be to preserve against decay by moisture and dampness, as well as to make comfortable in the damp and cold weather. Damp weather seems to have a peculiar effect on the structure. The condensation of the atmosphere upon the walls and interior of the building is at times so great as to puddle the floors in water, which is extremely injurious to the building and as unhelpful to the occupants, and can only be remedied by a system of steam heating. Unfortunately, a system of steam heating for that grand Capitol building seems to have been a bit beyond the technology of the day. Instead, there were fireplaces situated throughout that building, including in the House and Senate chambers. This is a drawing of one of those fireplaces done by Francis Strickland, architect, the son of William Strickland. The 2 fireplaces in the Senate chamber and the 4 fireplaces in the House chamber. Now, try to imagine heating that enormous House chamber with 4 fireplaces that are all located inside the committee rooms on the outside of that chamber. In short, it was a lot better to keep it warm than to try and get it warm. To that end, 1891 House Resolution 34 ordered that a porter be selected to attend to the fires in the hall during the night. The cold and the dampness of that building in winter took a toll on the members as well as the building itself. The McMinnville Southern Standard, January 17, 1891, reported, "A great many members of the General Assembly are suffering from severe colds, and quite a number are too sick to attend the sessions. The truth about the matter is, the Capitol building is a veritable death trap, and this assembly should make provision for having it properly heated and its general sanitation looked after." Now, I've heard that Capitol described in many, many ways, but death trap is a first. But the general sanitation of that building was an issue over and over each winter, not just the water closet. 1890 House Resolution 3 declared that the Sergeant-at-Arms purchase for the use of the House the following articles: 2 dozen spittoons, 1 dozen towels, 1/2 dozen dusters, 4 coal scutters, 4 shovels, 1/2 dozen cakes soap, 1/2 dozen glasses, 2 water buckets, 1/2 dozen brooms, 2 slop buckets, 2 whisk brooms, 1 sponge, and that the above be embraced in the general appropriation bill. Now, while the slop buckets may get everyone's attention now, what seems to have gotten the most interest back then were those 2 dozen spittoons. And the reason for the interest in them is found in 1890 House Resolution 4. At the close of the last regular session, there was a number of spittoons belonging to the House, and it appears that said spittoons cannot be found. That a committee of 3 be appointed by the Speaker to investigate the matter to ascertain what has become of them. I can find no committee report on what happened to those spittoons, but at least now they do have cleaning supplies for that winter. But the next year, 1891, House Resolution 29 ordered that the Sergeant at Arms be and is hereby instructed and authorized to purchase a sufficient number of brooms, dusters, water buckets, and slop pans for the use of the House, the same to be provided for in the General Appropriation Bill. So maybe they've kept their spittoons, but now they've lost their slop pans. But slop pans and spittoons aside, that building was still damp, dirty, and unsanitary 30 years later, when 1923 Senate Resolution 15 reported on the findings of a committee appointed to inspect that building. The committee reported that they found many unsanitary conditions in the Senate chamber and the corridors of the Capitol, and especially they found the corridors and halls dirty and unsanitary, filled with stone slabs, several piles of stone, quite a bunch of ladders, many old paper boxes and pigeonhole boxes, old plank, and a great deal of rubbish entirely too numerous to mention. In fact, these large and beautiful corridors give more the appearance of a storage room than of the large industrious halls dreamed of by the grand old architect who built this Capitol. That resolution concluded that the superintendent of the Capitol be and is hereby ordered to clean up these halls and corridors and remove all objectionable furniture and rubbish. So, in winter, that Capitol was cold, crowded, dirty, smelly, and unsanitary. And another important thing to remember about winter is that it gets dark early. And that was an issue for much of that Capitol's life in winter, because for much of that Capitol's life, it did not have electricity. And this was a problem whenever the legislature would meet at night. 1891, House Resolution 32 ordered that the superintendent of the Capitol be instructed to provide lights for the Representative Hall as soon as possible. Now, at one time, they had a magnificent 48-burner gasolier to light up that equally magnificent House chamber, but they had it removed in the 1880s. And then they learned that they needed that light each winter. And you'll have to decide if a single electric light hanging down from the ceiling in the center of that House chamber is better than that 48-burner gasolier that once hung there. One of the more interesting stories about that Capitol in winter comes from the 1890s. Now, at this point, the legislature was convening in January of the odd-numbered year, but remember that there was a lot more turnover in the legislature back then and in the legislative staff. Members did not have their own staff, but there were legislative staff in that Capitol, including the engrossing staff, those who kept up with all the bills and the resolutions. And they needed a safe place to keep all those bills and resolutions, and that safe place was a safe located in the engrossing clerk's office in the House chamber. And this is the winter story of that safe. Our story begins in March 1890 with House Resolution 7, that the account of H.C. Musgrove for $5 for repairing the lock of the safe in the office of the engrossing clerk be allowed, and that the same be included in the appropriation bill. So, the safe got repaired in March 1890, and the engrossing clerk uses the safe to keep the enrolled and engrossed bills and resolutions. And then came 1891. 1891, House Resolution 35 declared that the superintendent of the Capitol be instructed to immediately procure means, by employing experts if necessary, of opening the safe in the room of the engrossing clerk. So the safe was fixed the year before, and now they can't get it open again. 1891 House Resolution 24, adopted days after this, then says, the committee and the clerk of enrolled bills found the safe in their room locked and the combination gone. And by House Resolution 13, the superintendent of the Capitol was authorized to have said safe opened by the assistance of an expert. Said superintendent employed W.M. Rear to open said safe and change the combination thereof, whose fee for service is $5. So the safe has been fixed twice in back-to-back years at a cost to the legislature of $10. And that's the story of the safe, except when the next General Assembly convened in January 1893, they had lost the combination again. 1893 House Resolution 24. At the assembling of the 47th General Assembly, an expert was employed at an expense to the state to open the safe, now in the engrossing clerk's room, and whereas the combination has again been lost and the same expense occurred, it shall be the duty of the sergeant-at-arms to procure the combination to said safe, and the same be filed with the Secretary of State, that the combination may be obtained by future legislatures without further expense to the state. So the papers were so safe that nobody could get to them. And 1893 House Resolution 31 reported that the sum of $15 be paid to H.C. Musgrove for opening and repairing the safe in the office of the engrossing clerk, the combination of which safe having been forgotten by the former incumbent. So it's now $15 to open that safe instead of $5, and the locksmith is making a nice yearly salary off of the state. And maybe this time they were able to keep the combination, because the next mention of that safe is 2 decades later in January 1913. 1913 House Resolution 9, that the Speaker of the House is hereby authorized to appoint a committee of 3 to purchase for the use of preserving bills and records of the House a safe similar in construction and value to the one in the Senate. Authority is also given to trade in exchange for same, at best price possible, any unused second-hand safe, now the property of the state, the cost of the above to be included in the general appropriation bill. So they sold their safe for a second-hand safe used elsewhere in state government, and we only hope that they bought the combination to the safe as well. Of course, safes, cleaning supplies, spittoons, and slop pans are not what most people think about during the winter. It's the Christmas season, and there are several newspaper stories about that capital at Christmas. The Nashville Tennessean, December 25th, 1909. Everybody at the state capitol yesterday was too busy thinking about Christmas and opening their presents to do very much in the way of business. None of the offices will be open today, and everybody avowed their intention of staying away from business until Monday at least, and it is very likely that there will be a number of officials who will not be seen at their places until Tuesday morning. The Nashville Tennessean and American, December 21, 1914. The Yuletide tree on the Capitol Boulevard will be one of the new features of Nashville's Christmas. Under the auspices of the Commercial Club, a great public tree and exercises have been arranged for Thursday night. The tree will be on Capitol Boulevard, brilliantly lighted, and a great crowd will gather for public Christmas exercises, similar to those enjoyed in years agone at rural churches. Carols will be sung and short talks will be made. The next year, December 25th, 1915, the Nashville Tennessean and Nashville American reported on the rain that cut short the ceremonies, but did say that the decorations were brilliant. December 20th, 1919, the Nashville Tennessean and Nashville American reported on Governor A.H. Roberts being gifted a complete set of furniture by his Capitol family. December 23rd, 1921, the Nashville Tennessean reported that employees of the state capitol found little time to settle down to work Thursday, and all during the day were busy playing Santa Claus. That article concludes, other departments of the state also held Christmas frolies, and no one seemed to have a working spirit during the day. The entire working forces of the Capitol and the annexes had their pictures made during the morning while standing in front of the Capitol building. But winter has touched that Capitol and the members of the legislature in other ways as well. In 1913, Governor Ben Hooper called 2 extraordinary sessions of the legislature in September and October. The somewhat exasperated members of the General Assembly responded with 1913 House Resolution 5 of the second extraordinary session. That it is the desire of the members of the 58th General Assembly that Governor Ben W. Hooper be and is hereby requested not to call another extraordinary session of the legislature of the 58th General Assembly to meet earlier than December 1, 1913, in order that the members may have some time to work out some clothes and get up some winter's wood. Of course, newspapers also report on what is being done at that Capitol, not just on what's not being done at Christmas. The McMinnville Southern Standard, January 10, 1885. Both houses being organized will proceed to business. It is to be hoped the General Assembly will complete their work as early as possible and not spend their time and the people's money to no profit, as is often the case. Let them do their work faithfully, promptly, and adjourn. On April 3rd, 1909, the Bolivar Bulletin gave perhaps the greatest summation of legislative business ever. Several bills of minor importance were introduced in the House, and nothing of great interest transpired in the Senate. There is one other winter story that I must include. It comes from December 1894. On December 26, 1894, the Jonesboro Herald and Tribune reported on a newly elected representative, Enoch Dudley Duncan. Honorable E. Dudley Duncan, representative in the legislature from this county, that's Washington County, started to Nashville last Friday week, intending to walk all the way from Johnson City to Nashville. That's 285 miles now by interstate. This was 1894, and he was walking the whole way. The article continues. Of course, this feat will immortalize him and make him the center of attention at the Capitol this winter. And maybe, just maybe, after walking all the way from Johnson City to Nashville, he could ignore the cold, damp, crowded, and unsanitary conditions of the Tennessee State Capitol in winter. And so, no matter the season, no matter the time, the Tennessee State Capitol stands ready for use, as it has for over 160 winters so far. And ladies and gentlemen, that's all of my time. Thank you for your time.